Hey everyone, welcome to our live stream. My name is Wes and I will be your host. We also have with us today Marine and Casimir from the Substance team. They're in the chat taking questions for our QA at the end of the presentation. Okay, so for today, we have with us our special guest, Cornelius, a Berlin based digital artist. He will discuss the inspiration behind his artwork Gamma, as well as give us a breakdown of the process from modeling to texturing to simulation. He will show us how he leveraged Substance Painter and Substance source materials to achieve a mechanical result, which also incorporated details inspired by nature. He'll also detail how he used Cinema 4D in his workflow. So, Cornelius, thank you so much for being here today. It's
Hi,
really great to
Wes.
have you.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, perfect. So yeah, you have some really cool stuff to show us today, man. The
Yes.
artwork that you produced, it's quite amazing, I have to say. It's going to be a really cool presentation to see how you kind of go through this process.
Thank
So
you.
with that, man, I'm just going to hand it over to you. Why don't you, you can prepare, start your screen share, and just jump into your presentations. Start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So, can you see my screen? Oh, yes. There it comes.
Yep, looks like we're all
Uh,
good.
okay, so this little guy here. So just to have a clean start, my name is Cornelius. For everyone that doesn't know, I'm from Germany, currently living in Cologne, and I'm a 3D artist for roughly 17 years now. And this little guy on the left is me with my mom, and this slightly bigger guy on the right is also me in front of a computer, probably doing some early CG work. And yeah, so I was always drawn to creation in some way. I started really young and was active in a lot of online communities that had like their focus on creation or digital art in some way. We didn't call it digital art back in the day, but when we look back to it now, it was sure was the start of it all. These were the things I did in the beginning. I was in an online community and did like commissions for other people, and then I dived into interface design and designed these Winamp skin-like interfaces. And after that, I switched my focus on 3D. This is like from 2005, I think. It's like really early in my career. And I was still a hobbyist, not like a professional back then. And yeah, I just love to play around with 3D software and Photoshop and all that fun stuff. And yeah, that's something different I made back then.
That's really cool to have all of this old artwork like from when you
Yeah,
first got started. That's really neat to be able to look at
I,
that
I
now.
saved it from lots of hard drives. It's like a lot of things were lost in the process, but I could save a few things. Yeah, that's also like a really cool one I did back then. And also this. And fast forward to today, I do these kind of things. It's so I'm mostly known for really highly detailed 3D environments with like millions of polygons, and they took usually a long time. So I can sit anywhere between 3 to 7 months on a single artwork, like one image, and that's what I'm really known for in the community, I think. Yeah, that's also one of them. Yeah, but if you want to find out more about my work and have a look at the other projects I did, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Behance, ArtStation, and on my website. And I think that was it. And we will watch the Gamma video now. Yes,
Wow,
that
man,
was
that
neat.
was awesome. Yeah, so cool, man. That is awesome. So
Thank
do
you.
I know that you'll get into your process, but do you do like what do you do all the like kind of editing and compositing work in?
It's usually After Effects.
Oh, okay, cool,
So
cool.
it's just like I ran out a bunch of passes, and in the beginning I don't even know which I'm gonna use, and then I just throw them together and hope I can make it look right. In this case, I actually made the still. The focus was on the still images, and the video was in addition to that. So that wasn't planned, but it worked out pretty good, I
Yeah,
think.
man, such an
Yeah,
awesome video. All
yeah,
right, well let's get into it, man. Let's talk about how you did this. I can't wait. This
yes.
is gonna be really cool.
So first of all, shout out to my friend Lucas. Lucas Gutziel is a composer, and I know him for I don't know 10 plus years now, and he does all the music for all my artwork. And whenever you see music in my artwork, he's the guy responsible for it. And he did a great job on that and worked many hours to get it to the right point. And yeah, thank you, Lucas, if you're in the live stream right now.
That's
Kudos to
awesome.
you.
Hey, and I guess that's another secret, right? Like if you want to have really cool videos, you got to have a composer friend too. So
Yeah,
that's
that's, I mean, if you have a friend who is into music, just hit him up and annoy him with your ideas, and maybe he will help you out. Yeah, so in this case, I started with these still images, and the task was to create something that shows a little bit the variety of materials you can get on Substance Source. And I'm not a poet or anything, so visual art is my language, and there's no really strict plan or direct meaning attached to that. It's just a mix of nostalgic elements and things that I like and that look cool to me, and that's pretty much it. So I just like CRT monitors and cables. I'm a cable guy, as you can see here. And yeah, it's just my way of communicating with people. And as you can see here, I also like dust. So I know the dust everything up. And yeah, it's the idea was a little bit like to go make like a visual transition from like organic elements into these hard surface elements, and combine them in a way that just looks cool and interesting to people when they look at it. And I think that worked out pretty well. Yes.
yeah, the detail is just I love that. The more you
Yeah.
zoom in, the more you see.
Yeah. And why don't we just go ahead and I can show you what I did in C4D and the other tools I used for that. So when I start a project like that, or any project, what I do first is I block everything out, and I use like primitive shapes for that, like these here, the cubes and cylinders, and just align them in a way so they make a sketch, so I know where which part or which element I had in mind can go. And I use this to yeah, just like get an idea how the final image could look in the end. I mean, it doesn't look anywhere near the final image in this case or in this stage, but um, it's just easier to start from very rough detail and go to really detailed later on. And yeah, this saves a lot of time. Back in the day, I used to start with the details first, and like was lost in them, and figured out later that I just wasted a lot of time, because I can make it work in a big scale. And this way, when I use the blocking, yeah, it really helps in that case. So and after I did that, I go straight to the details. So there's not much time wasted on that, even though it's such a crucial part of the process. After that, I go to in this case Fusion 360. This is CAD modeling tool from Autodesk, and The difference to CAD modeling and subdivision surface modeling is that you don't work based on polys, but on NURBS and curves. As you can see here, you always have these lines that indicate the curves of the model. So you don't waste the time to manipulate or worry about edge flow in this case, but you have to bypass that. The time you save here, you have to spend on retopo later, and I can show you that in a bit. But yeah, working in a CAD modeling software is really cool because it's so much faster than poly modeling it by hand. And I can show you a little bit if you want. Like, for example,
Cornelius, did you find that it was hard to get into this? Because like I'm seeing a lot of various artists also using Fusion 360 for hard surface like this. It seems really great. Like, is it hard to learn?
No, not at all, actually. It's like, I think CAD software in general can be really intimidating, but in this case, it's really streamlined around these tools. It's, I think, for hobby or smaller scale productions and 3D printing. And a lot of 3D artists use it to just do hard surface work in there. And it's just really fast and easy to learn. And you also have this timeline thing here, and you can go back and change things. And it's like time travel. It's crazy. Once you work with that, you will miss that timeline in every other 3D tool you have. And yeah, it's just, as you can see, I just like made a hole in here and beveled the edge, and yeah, it's super straightforward actually. And yeah, after that, and after I designed that whole thing, I go back to C4D and export everything to C4D. And
Cornelius, sorry, man. When you're in Fusion and you export, like what format are you using, like OBJ?
It's a step file usually. So
okay.
it's like it's just a construction file for CAD programs. But C4D can import that and convert it into polygons. So you don't have the NURBS anymore. It just makes poly-based geometry out of it. And the poly-based geometry looks like that. So that's not really cool. You can't really, you don't have any edge flow here or anything. So if you try to find a loop here, you can see it just freaks out. And this makes it really hard to unwrap that. And if you want to texture something in Substance Painter or Designer or wherever, you need to have clean UVs, right? So what I did in this case, I just took the CAD mesh and made a retopo out of it that is really high poly, but works and has like clean, relatively clean topology. And you can see I can select loops, kind of. And this makes it easy to push it further down the pipeline in another tool that's called, I'm the master of tools here, Rhythm UV. So in Rhythm, you can see that's the arm from the big one, from the big model here. You can see that I just unwrapped that once. So I didn't like have more than one arm at a time. And I just copied this one down to each of these parts. So when I texture this one later, I can reuse the textures for each arm and can like puzzle around with them. And yeah, it's pretty much straightforward. It just does one thing, this tool. It's just for unwrapping things.
Yeah, and Cornelius, so why do you use Rhythm instead of just the unwrap tools in C4D?
Actually, because it's so the algorithms in it are way more powerful, and I started using that like way back in the day. The UV tools in Cinema 4D were very confusing. They aren't anymore, but they were really confusing. And I used Rhythm before it was called Rhythm. It was called Unfold 3D before that for years.
Yeah.
And I started using that for a long time and then just kept using that. never looked back. So yeah, and I mean, there are like rare cases when I have like freelance jobs or something like that, that I have to use Cinema 4D for that, but it's always like I have to look tutorials and it's just confusing, and you have this UV edit layout and everything. And Rhythm is just a software that does one thing only, and yeah, it's really good at that. So one trick pony, as I call it. Yeah, so then I retopo everything with a plugin that's called Quad Remesher. It's from the guy who made the Z Remesher and ZBrush, actually, I think. And yeah, from there, I export everything to Substance Painter, which you can see here. And you might ask yourself, okay, why does Cornelius unlink the whole arm so they don't, they aren't close together? I do that because in the baking process, when I bake the base set of textures, I don't want any ambient occlusion on these parts that might move later. As you can see in C4D, the arm isn't posed yet. It's just like one straight arm. And I want all the possibilities that I can add the ambient occlusion later with like dirt shaders and everything. So if I would like use the post arm, it would occlude to elements on the arm that will be moved later on. And it would look unrealistic. So I just used, so I just broke it up into little elements and separated them. So this won't happen pretty much. It's just like, I mean, I think there's actually like a function in the baking process that like a tick box that you can hit, but I always do it like that, and I'm just too used to that workflow that I do
Yeah,
it.
I mean that's totally fine. I mean to do it that way because then you can see all your parts and everything.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
yeah, there's an option for self occlusion you can just disable.
Yeah. I mean, it would be easier that way, but I'm an old school guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then what I did was I made a base texture set. So the first one I did was this orange rough material that is based on, so we have like 3 codes. One is Schmutz, which is like dirt in German. And if you disable that, yeah, that's like the AO pass. And here you can see a seam, but that won't be noticeable in the end. Then we have the code part, which is like the orange paint. And then we have the metal. The metal also has like different, several layers, like for rust and edge wear and so on. And the very underlying base for every material here is actually from Substance source. It's a metal pewter stripped, and I just downloaded it from Substance source and imported it into Substance Painter, and that's how it looks. It was perfect from the beginning, from the get-go, and then I built upon the like on top of that, and highlighted the edges a little bit, so we have these shiny edges here. Then I added some edge wear on top of that. Then
So Cornelius, for the edge wear and things like that, are you hand painting those or using like
oh
generators?
no, I use generators. In this case, it's metal edge wear, which is outdated, but I use it all the time because it's so fast to use. And there's actually this the one that you're supposed to use, but it's like really loaded with options, and it takes a little bit longer to fine tune. And I always just use that. Then I blur it. Then I add some blur slope on it and some more textures. And yeah, I just play around with it, to be honest. It's just not like I'm set with like one particular workflow. I just click around because the feedback is instant, right? I just can see what I'm doing instantly. And sometimes I just play around hours on end with it and look what it looks like and find out cool new things. And for the dust is the normal dirt, also outdated generator. It looks like that. And
yeah, you can alt left click on the mask and then we can take a look at the mask that's being generated. So you can get a good idea.
You mean like that?
Oh yeah, it does the same thing. Yeah. So like if
Okay.
you just select the alt left click on it, yeah, it'll quickly show like that's the mask that's being generated from the generators.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
This is it? It won't show them now.
Oh, it's in the roughness.
Oh
channel
yeah,
at the
yeah,
top there.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's like you said, it's really cool because you can just play with these filters and generators and just,
yeah,
come up with something and then fine tune it by hand later.
yeah. And as you can see, the base metal is still visible through all of them. So I just add on top of that and create like a crazy detailed roughness map and normal map and everything. And yeah, on top of that, there's the code with also dirt and several layers actually. And then it looks like that. Wait, it looks like that in the material. And then on top of that, we have the ambient occlusion, like the really dirty, grimy, oily stuff. Yeah, and I do that like 8 times. So I create 8 materials from scratch for the whole arm. Like this is number 1. Then we have a blue one. And then we have another orange one that is rather clean and not that dirty. And then we have a cleaner blue one. Then we have one that is only metal, just without the paint. And then we have metal with like rests of blue paint on that. Then we have one that is also made out of plastic with graffiti on it. And then we have one with shiny metal that is like not painted, but also not like heavily damaged.
Man, a lot of
And
variation.
yeah, I export
Yeah.
every one. So in the end I have for one object, like, or for one set of objects or set of UVs for that arm, I have 8 different material types that I just export, and then I can use them in Octane to play around with that. And this looks like that if I go back to C4D. So just imagine I textured the whole thing now, or not textured, like post the whole thing now. Like have several arms. It's just like one arm it's always the same arm. It's just copied. So I can use the textures I just created on each of these arms. And what I can do now is, because I have 8 different texture sets, and I can show you that really quick in the texture viewer, I can just use like the orange texture on that element, the metal, the clean metal on that, the rough metal on that, and so on. I can just play around with that in real time, because Octane is like a real-time rendering engine, right? So I see in the IPR what I'm doing instantly. And here you can see an example. Here I have this orange thing, and then when I don't like the reflection of some element, for example, I just switch it out and say, okay, maybe the plastic looks better on this one, or the rough metal, and I can just play around with them until it looks cool in the perspective I'm choosing. And yeah, this gives us a lot of freedom, actually. So it's really fast and easy, and I don't have to worry about like texturing each arm separately, have 8 different, or I don't know how many arms there are. I think it's 6. 6 different like arms with like different textures. I just made one big pile of textures that I can throw around
Yeah,
and be
that's
really
that's awesome.
flexible.
Yeah, it's such a
Yes.
great workflow because it's like you're like kit bashing materials now. Like
Yeah,
you have
exactly.
that. Yeah, it's
I
so
never
cool.
thought of that. Like kit
Yeah.
bashing materials. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a cool way to describe it. Yes.
Hey, yeah, could you jump back into Painter for a second? I wanted to
Yeah,
ask
sure.
you about before I forget. I wanted to ask you about the graffiti material you had. So I just wanted to see
Yeah.
like how are you getting the graffiti on there? Like what's
Oh,
your setup for that?
yeah, the thing is, so the graffiti are I'm working on a new top secret project right now that I can't share, but my girlfriend actually drew a lot of graffitis on the iPad Pro for that, and we reused that map for that and just threw it on the plastic, because the plastic without a graffiti is just a little bit boring. And it just looks like that. And we thought, okay, maybe it like needs something, because right now it could be also like painted metal. And we wanted to look, I don't know, and what goes on in my mind when I think of plastic parts, but obviously when you add graffiti to it, or like little scribbles, it turns magically into plastic, which is like a weird assumption, but yeah, that helped a lot. I don't know what the backstory for that could be, but I just thought it looked cool and like punky.
Yeah,
So
it's awesome. Yeah, to add
yeah.
the graffiti, are you like stamping it like with a paint, or are you using
No, no,
like a
it's just
fill?
like it's just a square map in the Photoshop that is tileable, so you can just repeat it infinitely, and I just threw it on there. I just didn't care. I was just like, okay, here we go. And then I added like a grunge map over it, so at some parts as you can, it's like chipped away.
Oh
And
yeah.
I mean, you can see here it doesn't work on all the elements. Here's a seam from the UVs, but from far away, that isn't that much noticeable. So yeah, that works
Sweet.
fine. And also for the, I think, what's that? Maybe you can have a look on the mask. Yeah, I think that's the blue part. I don't know actually how I did that, that they have different colors. I think I just filled some layers with different colors and then masked them out with the textures and painted over them or something like that. But it's
yeah.
yeah, it's pretty straightforward actually. Yes.
Yeah, such a nice detail. It's
Yeah.
really cool.
Also some like song lyrics from back in the day. Like
Yeah, that's
and
funny.
then like a band logo for like from Korn and something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. It's really, really nice. Yes. What else is there to talk about?
Oh, the monitor. We haven't looked at the
Oh,
monitor yet. Yeah.
yes, the
You don't want to
monitor.
forget that.
Yeah, so sorry. Yeah, so the monitor is a different UV set. And so it's also made just like from plastic with different edge wear effects. I initially used the same plastic, but it was too yellow-ish, and it looked like it came from like a really heavy smoker like company or whatever, and it was too crazy. And then I toned it down a little bit and played around with the edge wear a little bit more. Also, I used this thing that I create an empty layer on top of it and use it as an adjustment layer. I don't know. I think I have that from a tutorial you made actually,
No,
but I'm
I
not
think of it
sure
like an
anymore.
adjustment layer. Yeah, it's a good
Yeah,
idea. Like you can take the filters from the shelf and just drag them to the layer stack, and then, like
yeah.
you said, it puts the blending mode into what we call pass through. So it's like
Hmm.
basically pass all the data up to that layer, and then you're like applying a filter. Yeah, it works just like an
Yeah.
adjustment layer.
And when I did that, I mean, it makes everything a little bit sharper and like crisper. And I usually do that in the end when I'm done with everything. I also did that with the arm. Yeah, but other than that, it's nothing really special. I separated like the screen from the rest of the plastic because I mean, it's a glass screen, and we have some metal parts in the back, as you can see here. The screen is what I do usually is when I bake everything, I go to ID and then set it to mesh ID, polygroup, and set it to random. But recently, you told me that I learned that you can use these fun things that the geometry mask that you have, like that it just checks, okay, this is the separate object and this is the separate object. You can just use that and texture with that. And it's, I think personally, way more straightforward, because when you have to rebake things in Substance and have it set to random, it will randomly, like, you have to reapply every color mask again and say, okay, this part goes here. And if it's like a crazy big setup, this can take a lot of time. And in this case, this will never change even if you rebake it. So yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
this is a pretty new feature. I believe it was earlier. Actually, I can't even remember now. But yeah, it's a pretty
Yeah.
new feature. I can't remember when it came out, but it's pretty new.
Yeah. By the way, how do I get out of here?
Oh yeah, yeah, no problem. So you have the geometry mask kind of selected with that little blue outline. Just move
Yes.
over on the layer and just click on one of the layer icons, like yeah, like that. There you
Yeah.
go. Boom.
Nice. Yeah. So today I learned. And yeah, and then it's just the same thing. I just exported that. For this one, there was only one texture set, and yeah, I applied it in Octane just like I applied these materials. Applying it in Octane is actually also really easy. You go into the material, create a new standard material and set it to universal. And universal material is the base PBR thing that uses Octane, and you just plug your base color to albedo, your metalness to metallic, your roughness to roughness, and so on. It's just like really straightforward. There's no tweaking. Sometimes you have to set the gamma in your roughness and in all the black and white maps to 1, but you can just play around with it honestly and decide what looks better on the fly.
Yeah. Now, Cornelius, with Octane, I haven't actually used it in a while, but it looks like it is using like metal rough shaders now. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the case for the universal material. The universal material just not replaces, but it's like in addition to the standard material, the glossy and diffuse and the specular material, and combines everything into one big material that also works with the PBR workflow, like with the metal roughness workflow. And so you also have like coating and sheen and lots of crazy stuff in here. And usually you have to set it, if you want metal material, you have to set it to metallic, then you have a metal material, then you have to mask these parts out. And in this case, metallic, I mean, just like regular PBR, it just takes the color data from the albedo and makes the masked part into metal materials. And
yeah, so yeah, Cornelius, so with that said,
yes.
can you jump back over to Painter and show us like how you export? So like if anyone's watching who's new and they want to
yes.
export the textures, like what would they do?
I go to export texture and then set it to PBR metallic roughness. And usually I go with, depending on what I need, EXR, PNG, or JPEG. If I export a height map, I use EXR, for example, and set it to 32-bit or whatever, or 16-bit. And that works better for if you want to use displacement later on, because then you don't have the staring effect. And what I recently learned yesterday from a colleague of mine is that if we set it to based on output template, it exports the normal and the height map automatically in 16-bit. But I don't know how to set it to which format it would export. So usually I just stick with JPEG, PNG, and EXR, set it to PBR metal roughness when I work in Octane. If I don't work in Octane, or for example, in Unreal Engine or Unity, I use the Unreal Engine or Unity presets I need for that case. Then I set it to 4K, never 8K for some. I mean, 8K still feels like a little bit experimental. I think it's not like meant to. It's just like for rare cases when you really need really high res textures that I use 8K. But usually I just export everything in 4K, and then I use dilation infinite. In some cases that doesn't work. Then I use dilation and default background color, and then I export. Yes,
oh, sorry, Cornelius. And that padding you're using just to kind of like, I guess, bleed or dilate the textures outside the UV so it doesn't cause seams and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, usually it wouldn't do that anyway, but I just feel safer when I do it with dilation. And yeah, then I export everything. We don't have any crazy OMR thing going on when in Octane, so I have one map for each output. It's just like, okay, albedo goes here, metalness goes here, and it's just not like that I use the channels, like R channel for roughness and the B channel for something different, or smoothness or AO or something. It's really straightforward.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much what I do. It's nothing crazy actually. Also in the baking process, it's also pretty much standard settings. I tweak play around with the max frontal distance or the max rear distance when I bake from high poly to low poly. I think there's like, I mean, there's a science to that, all that stuff, but yeah, I just play around until it works most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Cornelius, I have a couple other questions that I kind of just wanted to ask, just about
Yeah.
your overall process. So, like, so far we've been looking at, like how you built things in C4D, and we talked about, how the UVs are creating. But I was kind of
Mhm.
wondering a little bit, like, I mean, this one I guess is more of an art question, but like, how do you come across your design? I think that's one of the things that I've always like struggled with, and I love to ask other artists this. Like you're sitting there, it's like you have that blank piece of paper, and like like how do you come up with the design? Like, where do your ideas come from? Do you do a lot of research? Do you get a lot of inspiration? Like reference art? Are you sketching ideas, or are you just kind of like just playing in 3D and seeing what happens? Like, what's your process?
So that's interesting that you asked that. So in general in life, there are things that you naturally find interesting, right? So there's people that are interested in helicopters, for example, and they look at a helicopter and they see other things that I would see, because I'm not really interested in helicopters, but they look at it and I think, okay, this looks cool. And why is it shaped like that? They think more about the form of things or how things do work. And I think that's like a mixture between general interest in things like robot arms, for example. I just find that interesting. And then when you think about or plan to build one, then there's like a whole bunch of problems coming your way, right? Because you build it, then you have the problems with the build and the technical problems on the 3D side, and then you have the problems on the design side. So you just look at robot arms you find via Google image search or Pinterest or whatever, and then you collect like a whole pile of images, and then there's like another thing that you look on materials. And for example, what I discovered, and I share this with many 3D artists that are close to me, that when you walk around in the street and you see an interesting material, you look at it in a different way. Once you start like using shading and like spending time with learning how to approach shading or texturing materials, you look at these workflows in a different way. And then you're sitting on the train or in a car and you look at like the handle on the door, and it's like it has little scratches, and you want, okay, how would I replicate that in 3D? And I think the general interest in these things, and when you combine them, is what gives like a natural drive in that design area. So you just, because it's just like problem solving all the time. So if you have a robot arm, it has to have a material, then you have to solve the problem. Okay, what would it look like? You have to ask these questions just all the time. It needs to move in these and these directions. I want to pose it later. In order to do that, it has to function in a way, and then the material has to be worn in that area, and so on. So it's just like asking yourself questions combined with a general interest in these things that you're building, and time, I think, and trying things out.
Yeah,
And
that's
reference
awesome.
images, of course,
Yeah.
always reference images.
So Cornelius, back in like C4D where you had like the structure, I think like when you and I first talked, you had mentioned to me a little bit like that you weren't really going in and sketching like preliminary sketches like that. I think you told me that kind of your process is that you kind of do like the sketch in 3D with just
Yeah.
like block ends and stuff. I thought that was really interesting because I kind of like to work that way as well. Like sometimes I'm trying to sketch, I'm like I can't really get what I want on the paper, but if you just start playing with some primitives in 3D, it's really
Yeah.
inspiring.
I mean, I can't draw, right? I tried so many times when I was young. I always thought I would be one of these guys that are like digital painters with like a big like graphic tablet and stuff like that, and I tried many times, but it's just not my thing. It's just like it gets boring after some time, and I respect everyone that is like a painter or can draw, but I can't do it. And but I have to do sketches at some point, right? And sometimes I scribble little things on napkins or something, but it's never like on a level that I could plan a 3D image with that. And
Hmm.
I mean, we have all the tools at hand for in every 3D application. You have Blender, you have like primitive objects, and if you have C4D, Max, Maya, everything, it always works the same way. And then you just use the if you can pretty much break every object on this planet down to a really simple shape. If you think about it, and then you place that around and play around with basic lights, and that's the way how I sketch. And I think many 3D artists do that actually, or should do it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like to try to draw, but yeah, I'm not very great at that. So it's like I
Same.
struggle, and I'm like, yeah, I think I could just work in 3D because it's like you already have that perspective built in,
Yeah,
as you work, so you kind of
yeah,
you
exactly.
don't have to worry about it. Yeah, which
A
is cool.
perspective, but I mean, I had that. Went to college and studied design and communication. We had this drawing class, and oh, it was so bad, like perspective drawing, and it always looked so wonky. And what I did was just I like printed out like 3D sketches and drew over them, and like copied them, which was pretty much cheating. But I think that many 2D artists that mainly paint these days or do concept art do that as well. They just do their base work in 3D and paint over it. I mean, whatever
Yeah,
works, right?
yeah. Yeah, I think that's like the real key is that I'm really learning for myself as well is like just don't get so bogged down sometimes in the technique of everything. Just
Yeah.
like just use what works. I mean, we have this amazing toolbox now as artists, and it's like just grab what tool works. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's one tool versus the other. None of
Yeah.
that really matters. It's just what works for you, and
The-
yeah, and
yeah.
just don't stress about it. You know.
I mean, imagine like 10 years ago, there wasn't like any substance or anything. You had just one big tool and maybe an external render engine, right? And
Yeah.
like thinking about unwrapping without baking and hand painting the textures. I did that, and it was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
don't want to go back. Now I have substance, everything works. It's just like, haha,
Uh,
this is really chill.
yeah.
And I mean, what do we have in 10 years from now? I can't imagine,
Uh,
right?
Yeah, I mean I know exactly what you're saying. It's like I remember it used to be in like Photoshop and it was like you export out like, your UVs from Maya and you take it in and you're just like,
Painting over
guessing
the
really.
polygons
Yeah.
and like here
Yeah.
maybe 50% gray for like some roughness, and it was like a back and forth that was crazy, and it took
Yeah.
so many hours to get it right. And yeah, today it's just like substance export, and it pretty much looks 99% the same as it would look in the substance viewport, which is mind-blowing.
Yeah, even back then there were some tools like I remember like investing like okay I'm gonna get into the body paint 3D. I think
Yeah.
Maxon I think that's still around, isn't it? I haven't
uh,
tried it. It was like over 10 years ago that I tried it.
yeah, it's still around, and it's just like yeah, you can't compare to any really bleeding edge texturing software. This is
Yeah, I mean,
just not.
there was another one too, and I'm trying to. Was it Deep Paint or something like that? Do you remember that? It wasn't Body
No.
Paint. There was another software that did that as well, and I remember looking at the two, and yeah,
The first thing, there was like this there was like a Photoshop plugin that did the PBR thing, sort of, that vanished at some point, and then there was Substance. That was the thing. So that
yeah,
was years of hand painting textures, and all of a sudden there was like a Photoshop plugin for that, which was super slow, and then there was Substance, and I was like, okay,
yeah.
finally.
And
Finally
then
someone listens.
yeah, and then the other day, like I was talking to some of the guys on the team, and we were talking about like just kind of reminiscing about Substance Painter, and it's like, oh, well, do you guys remember when it first came out though? Because it wasn't so great,
Oh,
but But yeah, because there was nothing like that really. It was people were like, "Hey, it's not awesome, but it's still way better than just trying to paint over
Yeah,
UV."
better than
You
nothing,
know.
right?
Yeah, exactly. So we were
Yeah,
just kind of like reminiscing on how much that grew from that first beta that we released. Where it was like
yeah.
Substance Painter, but yeah, you really couldn't paint very well in it. So it was kind of funny. But
I mean, it
uh,
sure changed my whole workflow, and
yeah,
even I mean, there's still what I also do. Oh, I have a cool example for that actually. So, um, sometimes you have like whole big groups of assets, and you don't want to like unwrap them, right? So you have like a picture with like a million assets that you don't have time for that, or you don't want to do it for some reason. And what I do then, for example, in this case, I had this tree thing here, right? And wait, I can show it to you. Yes. So this is a tree that you find on top of the mechanical thing in the gamma piece. And so I was really afraid of doing that because I rarely do organical stuff. And I thought, okay, maybe I can use a 3D scan that's royalty free, or make one myself, or I don't know. And what I did, I just used the volume measure and volume builder feature from Cinema 4D and blocked out this rough shape of a tree. And then I thought, okay, now I'm gonna unwrap it and hand paint the textures, and it's gonna be a mess, and it's
yeah,
just like horrible, and it will take so much time. And this was the scariest part of the whole project, this tree stump
really,
thing.
wow, wow,
Yeah, and I
okay,
was like, okay, I pitched that to them, and now they want me to do that, and I don't know how to do it because I don't know. And what I did was I just went to Substance Source, to the website, just downloaded tree bark, like a ton of tree bark, and opened it up in Substance Player, which is like this light version of I don't know, not like
uh,
Substance Designer. It's just like you can view the SBSR files in there, and just play with the values a little bit, and change the size and stuff like that. So it's just like really basic. It's like a preview thing, and from there on you can export tileable maps, right? So I had this bunch of tileable maps and just threw it on there without UVing or anything, and it looked like that. And that's what I used in the final thing. So no prep work.
and
It
that
was,
material's coming from source, right? Like,
yeah, it's just
yeah,
from
yeah,
source. It's just
yeah,
like source, downloading the file, the source file, opening up in Substance Player,
yeah.
exporting the
Can you open
maps.
your web browser and check it out while we're talking about it, just to kind of so people can get
Yes,
an idea in case they haven't seen it.
yes, I can
But
do
yeah,
that.
one other thing while you're opening that up, I think Marine was letting me know that with Source, this was kind of like you were new to using that, right? Was this kind of like your
Yeah,
first experience with Source?
yeah, I never used source before that. It's like that. As you can see, you
Oh.
find all the fun stuff here.
Yeah, we're
And
updating this like every month, so
yeah,
there's all kinds of stuff. We have atlases, decals, materials now. So
yeah,
yeah, it
that's
gets.
actually the one I used.
Oh
So
yeah, okay,
yeah,
yeah.
and then I just downloaded the SBSIR file and opened it up in Substance Player. You can also open it in Substance Designer and Painter, and every Substance tool can open these. And yeah, then I exported the maps from there, and you can like change the roughness, and because it's not just like a texture pack, it's also like a file that you have like parametric values that you can change the tiling, and depending on what you get, right? If you have like a brick material, for example, you can make the bricks bigger, and the I don't know, the color, change the color and stuff like that. Just an example. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I did. I exported it and just threw it on there without UVing. I mean, do you see the distortion here and stuff like it's not perfect, but it works for that project from that angle on camera view. It's perfect. And was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that was easy. I thought I would spend like 2 weeks on just that tree, and was like saved a lot of time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So with that being your kind of like with Source being new to it, I mean, like what do you think? Like how are you feeling about it? Would you use it
Yeah, I
again?
will.
Like,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's like, 2 or 3 things that I really like about it. One is the UI. I mean, it's very, very intuitive. I mean, you can just like, 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 you can just like we have so many resources for textures on the market right now. There's like a bunch of sites that you can and use that. And I'm not like sticking exclusively to one, but it's always great to have more options. And when I don't find it on that side, I will definitely find it on that side. And there's this, I think the variety on the Substance source side. I mean, you have atlases, then you have like all kinds of procedural materials, then you have scanned materials. That's also really cool. I always tend a little bit more towards the scanned stuff because it just looks more realistic. But if you use, like, for example, you create something stylized like cartoons or something, I don't know.
Yeah, we have a lot of stylized content on
Yeah,
here as
yeah.
well. Like,
And
yeah,
this is
totally
actually
stylized.
quite rare to find on other sites. If you go to, I don't know, I can't think of another example right now, but it's stylized textures. It's not that common around
Yeah.
other sites. So it's a great addition
Yeah.
to the other stuff that's around there.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
think that's, again, I like to always stress that's the most important thing about being an artist is don't lock yourself into like one thing, like one
No.
ecosystem. Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to. I mean, it only helps us to be aware of everything that's out there and use
Yeah.
everything. Like I like to use all the packages. I use all the services. I just I don't. It's just a tool. You're just gonna leave the tool,
Yeah.
use the tool. And so yeah, it's really good for everybody to be well rounded in everything.
And you can combine them, right? It's not like you
Yeah.
can't just use that with subs. I mean, just as I said, you can export the maps and load it into other tools and combine them with maps from other services, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just like the variety of options.
It's
That's what
crazy.
really, yeah.
Yeah, and again, kind of like as you and I were talking, like going back, because I think we're kind of I've been it's 17, 20. I was like I'm in my 40s now. I was like 20 years in my early 20s when I started doing 3D stuff. So it was
Yeah.
like it was like, man, there was just nothing there. you know.
No, it's
And
also textures. There was like, I think I had like a DVD from 3D Total
oh my gosh,
with
yeah, I
like
got you.
1K textures, like, and it was like eight textures. Here you go, have fun. And it not no roughness
Yeah,
because the engines couldn't do roughness at that point. It was just too slow. And it was
yeah.
just like diffuse maps or base color maps, and it was crazy.
I know, yeah. And it's just like I always think about this too. Like, man, what would it be like to be like a new 3D artist like today and with
Yeah, it's
everything
easier, I think. No,
yeah.
well, I won't say it's easier, but because you have so many tools, and it's just like, I mean, when I started, there wasn't even YouTube. What I did
Exactly.
was
Yeah, no
I
YouTube.
was just
Yeah.
reading the manual that
Yeah.
was in the software,
Oh,
and that was
yeah.
it. And I think it's like really cool to start out with 3D these days. I mean, it
Yeah.
might be easier, but it's also cooler and more fun, right? Because you
Yeah,
have
it is.
YouTube tutorials and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's more fun. It's less of a headache. Like, I mean, I guess it was
Yeah.
fun back then too, but it was like, a lot of it was just like, very much like hard to figure out. Now you have like, I mean, there were forums and stuff. I remember, I met a
Yeah.
lot of people from the old forums and stuff, but like, I don't know, man. Like my first training videos I ever watched, like I literally bought them from, I think it was 3D Total, and they were on VHS tape. Like
Oh,
literally, I
really?
watched. Yes, I swear it was like on VHS tape,
Oh
and it
boy, that's crazy.
yeah, yeah, it was the modeling a hand, and it was Brad Peebler, one of the guys who founded Moto, and but at the time he worked at New Tech with Lightwave, and
Yeah.
so like it was him like modeling a finger for a hand in
Oh,
Lightwave like
Jesus.
5 or something. I don't know, it was messed up, but I'm
Oh,
still, but I mean VHS tape, you know. So, anyways, that's fun stuff, man.
good old times.
Yeah, that was hard. That was hardcore 3D, man. That was like
Yes.
you really wanted it because you had to learn it, man. You had to read the book.
Yeah, I mean, the community also was way smaller back then, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just like there wasn't that many people around drawn to that work or anything. It was just like tiny teams with, and also I was the only one in my circle of friends who did 3D. And today I know so many people who do 3D, and like, even if it's just like people I recently met or something, it's just everyone is doing 3D these days.
Yeah.
It feels
There
like.
Yeah, man. And there's a comment that someone it came in. It's coming from Eric here in the chat, and I think it's super vital because like he
Mhm.
was saying here that says today, like when you start as a 3D artist, you're super overwhelmed by the amount of
Yeah.
resources, and it's hard to choose where to pick up. And I totally agree with that. It's like I think like you know you don't want to say, oh, it might be easier today, because it's not really, because the software is so much more complex and there's so many options, there's so many things to learn that, yeah, like where do you start? At least like, you know, when we first started, it was like, yeah, man, there's really only like one way to do this, you know? And so
Yeah.
maybe it was a little easier back then, but I don't
I
know.
mean,
I mean,
back
I think
then,
that, oh,
back
sorry,
then
go
that
ahead, man. Yeah.
we had like okay C4D, and then there was not the question, okay, which render engine to use. There was just C4D.
Yeah,
Just
that
use
was it.
C4D and the renderer that comes with it. What are you talking about, right? And today you have like, okay, C4D. C4D can do V-Ray, Corona, Cycles, Octane, and like a Indigo. And then you have Blender that also can do Octane and V-Ray, I don't know, and so many different options. And then there one plugin for C4D, like Octane for C4D is better than Octane for 3ds Max. And okay, do I work in 3ds Max now and use a different engine because it's not that good in Max? Or it's just like, yeah, it would drive me crazy. I'm very happy that I don't have to make these decisions anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking
Yeah.
rendering and stuff. Let's see some of your renders, man. I apologize, everybody. We've been sitting on the same kind of still screen for a while, but
Oh
man,
yes.
it's such a great convo, though, man. I love just talking about stuff like this. But yeah, let's look at some of your renders, because I also wanted to ask you, or maybe you could jump in a little bit to some of the lighting, like your lighting setup here. I think,
You mean these renders from
yeah,
the Gamma
yeah.
project? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, from your project, and then we could maybe you could just dive in a little bit into your lighting setup, because I think you surprisingly I think it's simple, right?
Yeah, it's really simple. So it's actually just wait, maybe I can show that in the 3D file. Can I? Can I not? Yeah. So the lighting is super simple and straightforward. You can see here that no, that's not the right one. That's the right one. It's it's just two light sources. So there's one from here and one from here. One is bigger, one is smaller. And it's just the thing that makes it that easy is, so what I discovered over time is that the fewer light sources I use, and this is not a universal rule, right? So everyone can use lighting as pleased, and I don't know that I won't have I won't claim that I know the right answer to that, but in my case, it's just that the fewer light sources I use, the better it looks for some reason. And in this case, I used just two, and I tried, as you can see here in the object manager, I tried around with a bunch of options. I have A old, then I have B and C, and I just use A and C. And then there is this disk, which is like from a technique I sometimes use, that I have like reflector, just like we would use in photography,
Yeah.
that bounces the light back to the object. And this would be invisible for the rendering, but if I use the camera one, as you can see, it's on a frame, but it would bounce the light back to the object, so you have like a fill light here. But I decided against it, and in this case, it's just this light and this light. And in Octane, I can't show you that right now, because then the video would stop when I render it, or it would crash. But you usually have this IPR that shows you the render feedback in almost real time, or depending how big your scene is, it can be slower, but usually it's pretty fast. And then you can just drag the light around and wait and try things until it looks good, right? So you have like you need a reflection on one of the monitors, then you place a light here and just move it back and forth until you have that reflection at that point, and you think, okay, that looks cool, but back here it's a little bit dark. Then you add another light, and then usually that's enough for my taste. What I also do is then I add volume fog around the scene, which also transports light in a way that it comes to that it gets to areas that wouldn't be in the light directly. And this all, I mean, if you have like a room, for example, that doesn't apply to that, because it's not in a void like this one. This artwork is just like black space, black void, and there you have an object in the middle. So it's really different to light something like that in comparison to an open environment, a landscape, for example, where you have a sun coming from above and you have the atmosphere and something. You don't have that at this point, and it's just like really plain area lights, just like geometric shapes that emit light in one direction.
Hmm. And do you also have like a little GI solution going on within Octane? Like you have your two lights and then there's a little bit of global illumination that's running, or is
Oh
it?
no, Octane doesn't work with global illumination in that case. So it's
Okay.
not like it's a path tracer. So what that does is for each pixel the image is made of, it fires like a ray into the scene that randomly bounces off of surfaces until it finds a light source, and then trace that back to the pixel it came from. And it does that for each pixel 1,000,000 times, or I don't know, like how high you set it, and then there is an average that is calculated for that pixel, and that makes the image. So you don't actually have like GI happening as light bounces on the surface and then it spreads, and it's just like it's generates this fake realism. In Octane, it's just like it's the real thing pretty much. It's just I always say it's the real thing. Obviously, it's not the real thing, but it works very similar to like a brute force render engine, that there's no interpolation happening or very little interpolation happening. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. There was another question that I did want to jump into before we start getting into the QA part, which was, someone was asking about the cabling and how you made those, and I remember how you kind of talked to me about that. So
Yes.
could you dive into that a little bit? I wanted to ask that one while you're still here in C4D, so you could maybe show it.
Yeah, I don't think I have the scene open for that. So the big one will be a little bit slow to show right now because it
Oh,
needs so
that's
long
fine.
to open.
Yeah.
But wait, I can show it like that. So yeah, I was, when I published that on Twitter, someone asked me, okay, what did you use to simulate this, and is it like a spline dynamic or hair simulation, or yeah, what did you do for that? And the answer is that I just did that by hand, uh, which is slow, but then you have the maximum control over it. I mean, I just placed the multi-socket thing there, and then randomly choose a cable from that goes from that end to that end, and just routed them by hand with B splines. So it's just a spline that I placed by hand and then put it in the sweep NURB and made a cable from it. So there's
Wow.
no simulation. It's just all handmade.
Yeah, so it was a Cornelius hand simulation then, I guess. Like
Yeah,
you were just
yeah,
hand by
exactly.
hand, point by point setting the
Yeah,
Bezier curve. Yeah.
but I'm actually, if you made one cable, you made all of them. It's just you get really fast at some point. It's just like you turn on the second monitor and watch a movie while you do that, or listen to a
Yeah.
podcast, and then just it's really meditative and calming and slow. But I mean, it is what it is, and it looks cool in the end, so it's
Yeah,
worth
it
it.
looks really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like one of those meditative state like honestly, I'm kind of a weirdo, but I actually don't mind like hand creating UVs. Like
No, I love UVs. Everyone is
yeah,
always scared of UVs. I love that. It's
It's
just
like you
like,
said, I put a movie on the second monitor, or I
yeah,
listen to some music and I just zone out, and it's like, okay, I don't have to think. You're just doing a
yes,
process, and it's just
exactly.
like, it's like seriously like a meditative state. I kind of
Yeah,
like it.
yeah. That's
All right, so we're the two guys that are weird about UVs then, because I really don't mind doing it at all.
No, it's just, I mean, it always depends on the tool, right? There's tools that make it like hard or annoying, and but if you have the right software that works for you and you know your way around it, it can be actually really fun. What is intimidating at the start, what I always had problems with back in the day, was that I couldn't wrap my mind around how a UV actually works. And just like I couldn't imagine the 3D object and making cuts into it and then just unfolding it. It's just like, and when I explain that to people, I always explain that to them like it's just a box that you get for Christmas, then you cut it open and so it's flat. And that's exactly the thing that you do with an UV. You just choose where you want to have the seams and where it would make the most sense, and then cut it open in a way. And
Yeah.
wrapping my head around that, it took some time actually.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, looking back, I remember learning that, and I remember thinking, yeah, man, that was the hardest. That was a
Yeah,
hard thing to learn. But as you said, I kind of thought the same thing. I tried to visualize, like,
yeah,
okay, I have like a little cutting knife, and I have the object in my hand. How would I split it open so that I could fold it flat?
yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Cool.
Cornelius, great, man. So I'll tell you what, I think we're going to shift over into the question and answer section here. So you could go ahead and, stop your screen share, and then we will just kind of come up to the kind of camera view here. And Marine has
Yes.
been collecting some questions for us, Marine and Kaz, and we'll just go through here and look.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, let's just jump into a few of these questions. I'm also still monitoring the chat over here in case anything new comes up.
All right.
So for example here, let's say, okay, so this one, the first one it's more of like a setup question really. So it's like your computer setup. So it's asking if you could say something about the hardware that you're using. The person that asked the question says they're on a Mac, and it seems like, they're saying, hey, for 3D work, I'm needing a PC. So like, what's your hardware? Like, can you give us a little idea of the cost? Like, what's the estimated cost for a good 3D setup for a workstation?
Okay, so in general, sky is the limit. I mean, you can go
Yeah.
crazy if you can easily spend 10K on one PC for 3D stuff. That's no big deal. But you could also get away with 3K. So right now at home, I have two PCs. One is the render machine that uses distributed rendering over the network, and the main workstation. The main workstation is Ryzen Threadripper 2950X 16-core processor, which isn't really necessary if you use GPU rendering, and two 2080 Ti GPUs in that machine, and two additional 2080 Ti GPUs in the other machine, and 128 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM. That's pretty much it. So it's I don't know how it was, like $6,000 I think when I bought it, roughly.
So a hefty workstation you have.
Yeah, I mean,
You have some horsepower.
yeah, I have some horsepower, but I mean, for the scenes I usually work with, which are really big, I actually wish I would have stronger GPUs. So not like in terms of speed, but of the VRAM size, which is also a factor, always a factor that limits how much you can do in the 3D scene. Also, yeah, I mean, you can go, there's like workstations. There's like this guy, Sebastian Michalski from, is it Czech Republic? I don't know, but he's building these crazy water-cooled computers with like 3090 GPUs or something, like really crazy setups that cost like 20 grand or something. So if you want to spend a lot of money on a computer, you can spend a lot of money on a computer, and it will also increase the performance immensely. But yeah, it always depends on the person, I think.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that I kind of look at is like, if you're in the Substance ecosystem and you're using Substance, like, just remember that it's kind of GPU bound. So just,
Yeah,
spending the money on a good GPU with some VRAM that goes further than some of the other components. But yeah, there's so many different use cases.
yeah.
So yeah, just moving on to some of these other questions. I think you may have hit this one already, but it was just wondering your texture size. It says in this case, I guess for the Substance Painter textures you created, like what was you exported at 4K? I think you said, right?
Yeah, 4K.
Yeah.
Sometimes I import. I made my own textures at some point. They are in 8K just to have the option if I want to. Sometimes I import 8K stuff and just uh, resize it to 4K. But for Substance, I usually just stick with 4K. So just export in 4K, work in 4K, and import in 4K.
Yeah, this was here's another kind of texturing question. They were just asking like, do you ever use the normal dirt node in Octane? I guess for creating like dirt and stuff, or are you just
yes.
using Substance?
So if for some reason, so when you model lots of things with Fusion 360, for example, you can't like make the mesh work in unwrapping tools, or you can't create UVs that work for you. You can also shade it procedurally and use the dirt node. It's just like, so Substance Painter is like the dirt node on steroids, just in such a high level, and the dirt node from Octane is like really it's just ambient occlusion pretty much. And yeah, you can bypass a few things if you use just that and mask and play around and mask it with noises and stuff, but it wouldn't look that great as you would just use Substance Painter. But if you have many assets, or it's just impossible to unwrap, this can also work. I do that sometimes, yes.
Awesome. And so, what do you think is the key for texturing a realistic asset? Like, do you have some like kind of principles you think that would be helpful?
I think imperfections. So even the most clean thing you have is needs imperfections. So if you model like a phone, for example, you want to make it realistic, just like I unboxed a new phone, put it on my desk, and took a photo of it, you will still see little imperfections if you go close to it. Then work with high-res data, and also it's never only about the textures. So if you have a 3D project and you want realism, it always depends on the textures, the lighting, and the modeling. So you can't get away with like a bad model or bad lighting and then fix that with good texturing. Everything has to work with each other. So if you have a bad model, it's really hard to make that look good and realistic. So you need a good model, and then you need good textures and good lighting. And if all of that works together, it will look realistic in the end. That's at least what always works for me. If I have a bad model, it's always impossible to make it look realistic.
Yeah, and when thinking in terms of like the physically based maps, like I find that the roughness map is like the key to that as well, because like you said, all those imperfections, that's where you're adding all that to the roughness map.
Little fingerprints and stuff like that.
Yeah, all that
and
stuff.
I mean, what I also do, I just clone dust on top of the object all the time. For like the last few projects I did, I just go crazy with dust, for example. And dust is something that's always around. If you take a camera with a macro lens and go really up close to any object, you will see little specks of dust on it, and it just adds realism. So this is like a trick that you can use, but yeah, it's also like part of imperfections, I think. Yeah.
Now you were talking about modeling. Do you model like in all your projects? Do you model everything, or do you ever use like any like libraries, or do you just hand model everything too?
This depends on the project. At work, I used libraries a lot. For my personal projects, I use libraries, but very few of them. So for example, if I have like a scene with like 15 different water bottles, I don't prove anything to anyone if I just build 15 different water bottles. I can build 5 of them, and then I'm annoyed and just buy the rest of them. It's totally fine for me. I don't have to prove that I can model a water bottle. It's just I can do that. It's annoying. Have you made like 10 of them? And then I reuse stuff from older scenes quite a lot. And but most of the bigger or more detailed assets I built myself, actually, just because I know what level of quality I want. And how I made, and I also want to design them in a way and have control over them. So it's just easier for me to just build them myself.
Yeah.
But it's not like not a question of, okay, I'm a true 3D artist, I have to build everything myself. It's more convenient for me to build them myself, and if it's more convenient to buy an asset, I will just do that. It's just like what gets me to the goal of my, or the creation, what does lets me finish the piece quicker in a way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going back to what we were saying earlier about using the resources at hand, like tools that are available. That's
Yes.
great. Do you rely on the triplanar in Substance heavily, like the triplanar
Yeah,
projections?
in the I use that with the dirt nodes and the metal edgeware nodes. There's an option that you can use triplanar blending, and I do that to hide the seams. So when I have the seams from unwrapping and you see them because you have a texture going over them and you see the hard cut, I use triplanar, and then you don't see them anymore.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So here's another question. Going back to rendering. So why are you using Octane?
It looks the best. It's
Okay.
out of
Yeah.
the box. So Octane you can learn in a day. If you know your way around 3D stuff and you're not a complete starter and just open the 3D tool for the first time, I can teach you Octane in one day, I would think. And it's out of the box without doing anything or tweaking anything, it will look the best of all the engines. It has a really great look. It's path traced. I really like path traced engines. It's very fast. And people might say it's unstable, but it's not that unstable, actually, for me at least. And yeah, I don't know. I know my way around Octane. And yes, it just works for me. I mean, there are also like other cool engines that I want to try at some point, but Octane always was this. It's like fire and forget. It's just like you fire it
Yeah.
up, and it just does it, does the thing it does, and it works. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, talking about other renderers, one question was Octane versus Redshift. Have you used Redshift? I mean,
I
what do you think of
used
that?
it once at I made a scene before that. It's like this dirty kitchen. I don't know. It's called Haze. It's a picture that I spent 7 months on, and my plan was to reshade the whole thing in Redshift to learn Redshift. Um, but it couldn't handle the scene for some reason. Probably because it wasn't Redshift's fault. It was like a combination of factors, probably. But after that, I didn't bother. And I think Redshift is a great engine that's very capable of a lot of things. But for the stuff I do, I just feel more comfortable in Octane. And I think I could do the same things with Redshift, but I didn't have like the motivation to switch it up for now. I mean, maybe if there's a project that where I need more out of core memory stuff because I ran out of VRAM or something like that, then I would think about it. And but yeah, so far I didn't have the chance to really to use both equally and make like and tell people, okay, this is better in that software. And I think there's lots of people who use both, but personally I only use Octane. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like we said earlier too. It's like one of the problems you can face as a 3D artist today is like all of these options. So like what do you
Yeah,
learn? And things are so much more
exactly.
complex. So yeah, I think that definitely makes things harder to learn in today's time. You
Yeah,
know, versus versus years back. Yeah, there's a lot of you have YouTube and videos and tutorials. It's awesome, but again, there's so many different
Yeah, I
things
mean,
you can
there's
do.
also so many tutorials, right? Which one
Yeah.
do you choose? Which course
Yeah.
do you choose? It's just like,
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's not a bad problem to have, you know?
yeah, I
Uh,
mean, it's, yeah.
I, yeah, I get so excited about that, when I think about today, because I love learning new stuff and it's just awesome. I just being a 3D artist is such a cool job to have. And it's just like, every day you look at there's something new. Oh man, there's a new thing that's come out or a new technique or some new thing to like keep you
Do
going.
you ever feel tired of it and be like, oh,
Um,
that was enough for a week?
Well,
This
well,
is-
well, yeah, I don't know. So I get it. Here's what I guess what happens. I get really excited about it, and I'm like, yes, this is awesome. But then like I'm like, well, reality sets in. I'm like, well, I don't have time to do that. I can't learn that. So I kind of end up staying with what I already know. But I do get excited about it. I do think it's cool. I do spend time, just at least being aware of what's out there because I don't know. Like with me, I like to, I will use a tool until it's not useful anymore. And then if
Yeah,
it's not useful anymore and it's not good, then I'll put it aside and move on to something else. I tend to not have like brand loyalty all that much. I try to just, put the art first and use the tools that work and then, see what else is out there.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So with that said, and we'll do one more question here before we kind of close it out. And I think you may have answered this one, but I think it's really good. So it's asking about your personal projects, and again, it's going back to that. Do you use 2D concept painting for your environment projects, or do you block out in 3D? And I think you kind of talked on this a little bit, but
Yeah.
I just want you to hit it one more time. I thought your workflow was really awesome.
Yeah. So if I do, I don't know if it's like targeted specifically to my personal project, but in any case, I think I actually block out more in my personal art when I'm at work and doing like commercial stuff. It's never like I make scenes, big scenes for clients. It's always like different things like an animation or like smaller scale stuff. And for the big personal projects, I always block things out. I use primitive objects, place them in the scene, and use really basic lighting to get an idea of the composition. So this is, I always tell people that this is actually the part where the image is made. So I build the image, and after that, it's just detailing. I just replace every block in the scene with a detailed counterpart. So yeah, that's actually kind of the most important step in the
Yeah.
process, but it's just like the most mundane and boring thing because everything looks bad. It's just like a block without textures or just a base texture, and it's like really ugly. And but it's really important that you do that when you have like a big scene, because if you go into the scene and spend a lot of time on a detailed building or something, and then it's there, and then, oh, that doesn't work, I have to change the building, then you have to start all over again. If you start with a box, you're so flexible, everything is fast. The render time and the prep time before the rendering starts isn't like 5 minutes, it's just 1 second. It's just like really fast pace. You can make many iterations of that process. And once you're in the scene and you have like 20 million polygons in the scene and like characters with particles and VDB files and volumes, and I remember I did a project when I hit the render button until I could see a preview of the image that was rendered, it was like 7 minutes. So it's the prep time of 7 minutes. And if you change big parts of the scene in that phase, it's really bad. Then it's just better to plan ahead and just do the blocking and sketching first, and then you go from rough to detailed. And yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, man. All right, so we're gonna close this out. I do one more thing, just one more right before we go.
Yes.
One question was, what's your best advice to give to a 3D beginner that you wish you knew when you started?
It's a long game. It's not, so there's like a ton of people doing every days, and everything in the internet is fast paced. There's trends, and everyone is doing daily renderings and stuff, and you have all these people that are crazy good, but usually the ones that are really great at what they're doing, they do that for a long time. There's nobody, no 3D artist or very few 3D artists that are extremely good at what they're doing and do it for little time. So it's just like there's nobody doing that for 2 years that is tremendously good at it. It's just like when you start with 3D, it's only natural that you suck at it, and you will get better and better, and it takes a long, long time. For the first years of this career, I was really bad, and I just learned a lot over the years. That's the secret, in my opinion. Just don't listen to the people. Don't go too much on social media. They all show off. I mean, that's what social media is for, right? People show off, and what they don't show you is the attempts that they failed at. But you will fail, and it's okay to fail. Don't get yourself crazy. Just take your time, have fun, and it will take a long time, but it's okay.
Oh man,
I,
that's
I, I mean, I'm doing that
awesome.
for 17 years right now, and I've still so much to learn. And it's just, yes.
Yeah, dude, we are totally in sync, man. That's the exact same thing I was gonna say. It's just like, yeah, just don't be afraid to fail. Like I was so worried about my stuff looking bad, and I look
Yes.
back and I'm like, dude, I just don't sweat the small stuff. You know, life's too short for that.
Yeah.
Just have fun. That's the biggest thing. Just enjoy yourself and have fun. Who cares if it's good or bad? Just enjoy it. You know,
Yes.
don't get so stressed out. But yeah, man, that's awesome. Well, with that said, man, we got to close it out, and
Right.
so yeah, we'll start to let's see. One of the things I want to make sure I do before we go here is well, obviously, Cornelius, thank you so much for the time, man.
Thanks for
I
having me.
greatly enjoyed chatting with you, man, and just having just a nice kind of just fun chat about just 3D in general, and just where you came from and how you got started, and it was just it's very inspiring. And let's see. Also, we did have a feedback little survey that I think Marine and Kaz had posted in the chat. So if you guys don't mind, just go ahead and hit that survey. Just let us know things we can improve on. And also a quick plug for our next live stream that's coming up. Looks like it's going to be on April 21st. It's going to be on packaging creation, and it's going to be awesome. We're going to have the source team with us. I always say this, the people that are at the Substance team, they're just amazing. They're wizards. And anytime we can have any of the team members on the stream, it's just awesome to talk to them. So we're going to have them, and then also we're going to have Ronan, who's done a lot of really great work for us as well, teamed up with the source team on various projects. So they're going to go over the project that they did for the packaging creation. Again, that's on April 21st. So that's it. Cornelius, thank you again, man. And thank you everyone for joining us. This was so awesome to just talk again. And we will, everybody just, be safe, take care, and we will see you next time. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.